Imagine a king so mighty that his command was law, a man who could sentence life or death with one glance. But beneath the crown and the throne hid a secret more sinister than any rebellion or treachery. His own flesh betrayed him. It rotted while he was still alive. His odor clung to the halls of his palace. His wounds grew infected. His flesh ate away. And in death, even that might not have been enough to muffle the anarchy of his rotting body. Such is the strange story of the rotting life King Henry VIII. When Henry initially ascended to the throne in 1509, he was the embodiment of glory. Young, tall, broad-shouldered, and sporty. A man whom the world described as handsome, powerful, and bordering on godly. The populace loved him. Foreign courts courted him. He was referred to as the Golden Prince of England, born for greatness. At this tender age, he was full of vitality and charm. But life is wickedly ironic, for the same individual who dazzled the world once would proceed to frighten it. His metamorphosis from prince to beast was more ghastly than any fairy tale would have envisioned. The decline started with a single mishap. In 1536, during a jousting match, Henry was thrown from his horse. The impact left him unconscious for 2 long hours. In medieval times, that was as close to death as one could come. But Henry survived, and he was never the same again. The king who awoke from that fall was changed. His temper grew violent, his mind twisted with paranoia. Historians think he was traumatized with a brain injury, one that broke his charm and filled it with cruelty. The accident was the start of a slow fall into anger, lunacy, and decay. As time went on, Henry's once powerful body rebelled against him. He grew to almost 400 pounds. His waist size exceeded 50 inches. He grew so big that mechanical equipment had to transport him from one room to another. But the weight was just the beginning of the nightmare. His legs erupted in ulcers open, pus-filled, rotting sores that wouldn't heal. They were covered in pus, moldy flesh, and a stench that was almost unbearable. The smell was so pungent that courtiers held scented cloths over their noses. Servants dreaded the task of dressing him, and they drew straws to see who would endure the ordeal of being around him. The Golden Prince of England was a rotting giant, and still insisted on veneration, and as his body rotted, his wives suffered. Henry is best known for having 6 wives: divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. But the rhyme conceals the horrific reality. Anne Boleyn, charged with adultery, was made to witness 5 men, her brother among them, brought to execution before she herself met the blade. Catherine Howard, little more than a teenager, was sentenced not just for what she did, but for what she was. Henry altered the law itself just to ruin her. Even those who managed to save their lives, such as Anne of Cleves, lived in fear all their lives, having to take humiliation in return for survival. For the wives of Henry, the crown was not a reward. It was a disguised death sentence. If his brutality was horrifying, his hunger was insatiable. Henry consumed more than 5,000 calories daily. Whole roasted pigs, stacks of chickens, mountains of bread, rivers of wine. His kitchens, manned by hundreds, toiled day and night to feed him. But meals weren't just about gluttony. They were rituals of terror. Every meal was tested for poison. Servants had to eat ahead of him, then wait Henry, observing to watch if they survived. Only then would he eat a bite. Dinner could consume several hours. Not a feast of happiness, but an act of paranoia. Picture hundreds of courtiers sitting by as a bloated, rotting king stuffed himself while they politely applauded through the stench of his decaying body. And paranoia governed more than meals. It dominated his whole kingdom. Henry turned his palaces into fortresses, secret passages, wall peepholes, eavesdropping devices in rooms. He slept with swords beside him and sentries over his bed. Even his daughters Mary and Elizabeth were watched as if they were traitors at his court. No one was secure. Nobles, servants, even relatives cowered in fear. A misspoken word could bring one to the tower. A dream, a suspicion, even a whisper meant death. Henry killed not only the guilty, but the perceived. His own paranoia was so contagious that the whole court consumed itself. Spies spying on spies. Servants turning against masters, a kingdom strangled by the fear of a decaying tyrant. By the time he died, Henry was no longer a glorified king, but a captive of his own flesh. He could not walk, he could hardly move. His body rotted away in chunks, leaving rivulets of decay on palace floors. Doctors quaked in his presence, servants choked as they carried him. Still, even then, his cruelty remained. The man who had once been the symbol of hope was now a symbol of fear. When death finally arrived in January of 1547, it was no peaceful departure. His corpse, gorged with gases, swelled horrifically. His skin stretched taut, his odor insufferable. Banded in lead put into a heavy coffin. His corpse would not remain still. In the funeral procession, the inevitable occurred. The coffin exploded, burst asunder under pressure of rot. The remains of the once powerful king poured out. The odor was so ghastly that the procession was forced to halt. And then a scene that nobody could ever forget. Dogs were observed, lapping at the rotting flesh of Henry VIII. The divine right, king had been reduced to Chiron for strays. Even death did not bring peace. His coffin had to be widened to fit into the grave. But still, the earth spurned him. 4 years after, reports of uncanny noises and odors drifted from his tomb. Some said it was his ghost. Others knew it was merely the odor of a body that could not settle. His reputation, like his body, could not rot away quietly. So how do we remember Henry VIII? 3 of 6, the founder of the Church of England. The king with 6 wives, the monarch who defied the Pope, maybe. But history has another reality. Behind the pictures, behind the glossed-over myths, was a man destroyed by his own flesh. A rotting, living king, a monster made not only by power, but by rot. Henry VIII is not just a page in history. He is an example, evidence that not even the throne, not even the crown, not even the empire could protect a man from his own mortality. Ultimately, even the greatest of kings was reduced to nothing more than a hostage to his own flesh. And even death was not enough to stifle the turmoil of his decay.